Hey there, this is Conversations with Men Women Need to Hear. This show is sponsored by, or it's brought to you by, Chew on This Media LLC and Visualize Unlimited LLC. I'm Angeline Chew Longshore, and this is Zelis Daniel. And today we're talking about trust. Trust is a all-encompassing, huge word. We were just talking before this show, Zelis and I, about how it discover with each other and with you in this conversation, how you build it, how you lose it, what happens in relationships, because everybody knows it is the key. It is a foundational piece of relationships, right, Zealous?
Absolutely core part of the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that how I build trust in a relationship is sort of how it's a really conscious thing, and how I build trust with my children in parenting. It was a really conscious thing, but I don't think most people actually consciously think about how to build trust before they're in a relationship or when they're starting a relationship. Do you?
I mean, let's go and just take a look at the starting of a relationship. There's such this element of portraying your best self. I'm seeing this now with, internet dating and whatnot. We've all known that people try to portray this ideal image. That's how you're going to attract the right person for you. So I feel like so many relationships start off on the foot of deception, where it's like, you don't look like that in the morning. You know what I mean? You don't act like that when you're having a bad day. Let me present my best self and hope that I find somebody else whose best self is adequately inflated, so that when the honeymoon's over, we might actually be on the same ground. And they're not thinking that. It's just like, no, I want the shiniest, prettiest, most handsomest. So
I'll tell you a quick
um,
story. I feel like you're going to see my not best self because I don't know what's going on with my hair. But anyway, I'll tell you a little story about my Match.com days. So this is just so telling of how this works to build trust or not to build trust, and actually how being authentic really works. So I was in a situation where I just had a fertility doctor tell me that I only had 2 years till I might not be able to have kids, because I had produced a show
mhm.
for Discovery Health on infertility. So I discovered this and I was like, okay, I've got to get on this quest to find the man. And I'm going to go on Match.com and I'm going to actually just say what I really need to say because I don't have time. There's no
Yeah.
playing around. So I literally put on there, against all my friends, like, good advice. They're like, no, don't say that. I put on there, a man who must be ready to have children tomorrow and get married tomorrow. I mean, children first, married second, because I just needed to have the children first. And I had people show up that were amazing. They were like ready to be dads. I put all the things that, like, I knew that I needed in a real day-to-day relationship that would work in a family, and everything. Like, literally, it was everything. And I got really amazing men that I met up with that answered this ad. And none of them were the right person, because I knew exactly, I could feel who I was looking for, but I wanted them to be like for a friend. I'm like, you are so good. It's like, you're so good. You're
Yes.
like everything I'm asking for, but I just know you're not him. So I wish I had a friend for you. But I think that when we are so transparent, then those people were like willing to be my friend. Like, they were like really surprised at how honest I was, and that told them that they actually could be married to me. It's like,
Yeah.
if it takes out that whole weird trying to figure it out trust thing, and I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it just fast tracked everything, where they're like, okay, I get you. I know where you're at.
Yeah.
I'm there too. I want to have kids right now. I've got this stability and this setup, and I've been thinking about it. And it was just like, wow. Like, I never knew as a single person that I could actually be that honest. But when it came down to that desperation time of, I only have 2 years, and that there's a window. So that was really very telling to me. And then the way that people responded was really telling,
Yeah.
that
I
we could
want to
build
know
a
why you would
relationship
say
on that.
why. I want to know why you wouldn't think that is for everyone. You know, it's like, obviously it should be for everyone. And it really makes me think about, like, how much do people trust themselves? You know, like, I think there's an interesting level there that I just hadn't even considered. But it's like, you know, if you're not ready to be fully honest and upfront and just, you know, with all humility and just being yourself, if you have to portray some other image, like, are you being honest with yourself? You know, you're probably not. And that's probably why you're not in a happy relationship. You know, it's like
Yeah.
that really kind of, that's where trust is going to really start, is trusting yourself and that you are good enough and that there is someone out there for you, and that you have to be honest with yourself and the people you engage with.
I have a friend who, she was a writer at NBC with me, but she became a Oprah's, one of Oprah's Super Soul Sunday people, you know, that talks and speaks everywhere, and a TEDx person, and on marriage. And her one of her main TED Talks was about, you have to marry yourself first. And it's, if you don't really trust and love who you are. I know this sounds like so, you know, because it's like trust and love yourself, you know, but really truly, if you put out a fake match.com thing, that means that you don't believe you have the goods. That's the bottom
Yeah.
line. And if you don't have
Yeah.
the goods, no one else will see that you have the goods either. So it's an exercise in futility. If you're going to just waste a lot of time and get frustrated, so you might as well stop. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, I call it tending your own garden. You have to actually like get in the soil and like refertilize and dig up the weeds, and like, what's here? Do I want to do this? Do I want to grow weeds? No. What do I actually want to grow? Let's like make some plans, and it might take some time, but you know, you got to grow what you think will actually be sustainable for yourself as a
Mm-hmm.
person and the other person. And the other person will be like, oh, there's a beautiful garden. That person's taking care of themselves. That person gets who they are. But if you're like, and I have a whole like podcast on this. It's called The Seed in the Soil. It's actually this animated little cartoon that I've storyboarded. But if you just put fertilizer on top and then like put like fake flowers or something, or fake plants, because you're like, oh well, you know, I'll just put that on top, and eventually that fertilizer will sit in, but in the meantime I'll just put these fake flowers. Well, you're gonna be smelled from a mile away that you're fake, and that you didn't really work your soil, and that you just, you
Yeah.
know, like tried to do the fast track way. And really, authenticity is the fast track way. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, here I am, I'm not perfect, I've got these different things. You don't have to put it out there all on your profile. I'm not perfect. I'm these horrible things. But to acknowledge, like, this is really who I am. This is where I'm going. And so that part about me being needing a man to have babies, that I had very little time, which meant I was getting older. All those things in women's minds are like, I can't reveal those things, that I need a man, that I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
older, that my fertility is like that, you know, all those things are like so taboo. But I had tons of like dozens of men who were really interested. So, you know, we have to kind of rethink what we're putting out there and why. And I feel like we've already gone like past the rainbow, like when you're going up the rainbow, you're building to like the crescendo. And so we're already at that place, like, just trust and love yourself. You know, I don't want to, I think we've gone a little bit too, I want to backtrack a little bit, because um we need to unpack this a little bit more from the beginning of where, what we do when we actually build. And
Yeah.
the way that we enter into relationships is how we set things up. It's like setting the tone. You know, when you go into a new workplace, there's this like, who's the new person? What, you know, what are they gonna do? And you have to like prove yourself. Well, if you set the tone and you let people know, you kind of like label yourself before they label you, not in a fake way, but like, here's what I'm about. I'm super open and I'm a helpful person and I know my stuff and I'm not going to get into your business and whatever it is, then people like they can relax. The workers around you're like, okay, I don't have to worry about that person taking over or being annoying or trying to outdo me or whatever it is. They suddenly relax and then they can be themselves. So that's just a workplace scenario. I do have something, I don't know if we should get into this, but I do have something that I did with my husband and then also what I did with my children to build trust from the very, very beginning. So are you interested in either of those?
Yeah, no, I think that we've got a lot to talk about with trust. And I think that, right now, one of my initial takeaways is we think of like building, you know, the foundation for a good relationship. And I think that something we overlook is how important it is to build that foundation within yourself. You have to like come in with, some trust and some real like acceptance of yourself, and, know that you're going to do the work and maintain, because, keeping that perspective of yourself requires maintenance and training. And it's like you can achieve that, but then 5 years into the relationship, you're frustrated with yourself for the way you've behaved or the habits you formed or the things you did or didn't do. And that's a tricky one, is we got to like maintain our own foundation. And that's, and just talking about it and having understanding and awareness is going to set the stage for your relationship and that foundation you build with your partner.
Well, we are ever changing, and that's the thing that we have to realize is that the only way to have a relationship is to communicate and understand each other. And if we don't understand ourselves, then we can't really fully communicate. We can't really fully um, be connected. And I think there's actually, this is a tragic thing that I see all the time, and you probably do. The tragic thing is there's a lot of marriages that are actually not connected, that are not real. They go through the motions. They're like legally married and they live in the same house and they sleep in the same bed and they go through the motions because they don't know what to do and they didn't set it up well. And so I want to get into how you can enter a relationship setting it up well, and then also if you're in a relationship, how you can get to that place where you are not just going through the motions anymore, like how to build that again. So I'll just, of course, go to my own relationship to say, when I after that whole fertility thing, I did find the man, and that's who I'm married to now, which is Zelis's cousin Aaron. And what I knew was that, right, I mean, from the get go, the tone was extremely authentic because he knew. I think I have told you before the story where I saw him. He was a kayak tour guide on Maui. He didn't know me. I didn't hide that I was attracted to him. I like literally saw him and I was like, wow, And so the honesty from the get go, I didn't have time. And I think everyone can treat it like that. Like, we don't know how much time we have. So why not just be honest? And so the tone was set. And then continuing in that tone was not throwing myself on him or saying desperately, oh, I need to find a husband, but to just be conscious of, I'm not hiding anything that I am. I'm realizing where he's at. He's a man in his 20s, super single and probably wanting to be single for a while, which was true. He did want to not have children yet, not get married yet. And I didn't try to talk him into it, but I was just honest. And when in the first days of interacting with him, when I just saw him as this tour guide, he we just talked naturally and I didn't try to force anything, but I was just honest with everything in my life, and I didn't try to hide that I was a television producer, to think that, oh, maybe he'll be intimidated by that, because sometimes women who are powerful get to the point where they're, oh, I better like diminish myself so that he feels like he's the man. In the beginning, there's all this thinking that women do. They're like, okay, I've got to like walk around whatever it is, and I'm not sure, and try to appease what I think he will want. And that is very common because they're like, okay, he's got these 5 things that I see that are on my list that look like he's the man. And that, so I'm going to try to like fit whatever I think he wants. And that's really a way to set yourself up for doing weird things. And he's going to go, why is she doing that? Like, is she really into hiking, or is she like pretending that she's into hiking because she thinks I'm into hiking? Or maybe she's not a vegan, but because I said I'm a vegan, she's suddenly like not eating any meat, and you can't have a foundation of a marriage on these falsehoods. So I actually went full on the opposite way after we had talked and we realized that we wanted to really explore our relationship. I just had conversations about visions of like not who I am, like lecturing, but I'm seeing this kind of marriage. I'm seeing when we do this, that when we have children, I think I literally said this. If we have a girl and she wants to dye her hair and pierce her body and have tattoos and wear, I don't know, just nipple rings or like whatever it is, like if she just wants to go all out, how would you feel about that? And is that to you an expression of herself? What age is okay with that? Just kind of exploring like thoughts of how we would react as parents. And we weren't even necessarily talking about getting married yet, but I was like, if I'm just wondering, what would you think? How would you respond? Because we were just like talking, and it gave me an indication of how, what his limits are, what kind of fathering he would do, um, and how what his range was of, that was similar to mine. And and then the questions I asked him were pretty out there in sort of in that way, but it didn't bother him. And for me, that's important. Like, I need to have a person that I can really talk with about everything and maybe be a little bit out there and have them kind of enjoy that. So that part of me is like, I'm sometimes a little shocking in how I say things, but if you like that, then you'll like being with me. you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you witnessed kind of like the beginnings of our relationship. It was,
I can totally affirm it. I was kind of shocked, just because this, you know, dude in his 20s who's got this kayak job and is
surfing,
single and is enjoying this good life, and this woman that I didn't really know how old you were, but I could tell
older.
you were more mature. Yeah, you were more mature. I was like, this is interesting. I mean, it was almost like you just plucked this ripe piece of fruit, and getting to know you now, it's very clear, just your personality, because you are both experienced and mature in a number of ways, but you're also just fun and playful, and you have an open mind, and that's really uh, you know one of your magic charms. So, but yeah, it's also just that being transparent and clear and honest up front is so valuable. I think it's underrated in the dating world in this day and age, and um, certainly has got to be one of the reasons why we have so many short-term relationships, and people trying to figure out who they're going to really mesh with and who they're going to match with. And it's like, well, if people aren't really being honest and upfront about themselves, then how are they going to find somebody else that's going to be honest and upfront? And I've had to kind of remind myself in this mental space of like, if I see pictures that are a little too model, a little too picture perfect, it's like, just keep swiping. If somebody's got like, I don't want too much attention, big sunglasses, cover photo, it's like, well, what's going on here? Somebody's Maybe either being a little more genuine and they don't want all that attention. There's something about people that want a lot of attention that I feel is there's a level of dishonesty going on there. It's like, what do you think's going on there with that whole aspect? It's like,
Well, that to me is their own need for something that's calling to them. And if there's a difference, somebody who is out there, but they're motivated by doing for others, so that they're doing for others, so they're super out there, or somebody that's being out there because they're like, look at me, I need the attention, because they need love, because they are lacking something that feels satisfying to them in whatever way. Maybe it was childhood, maybe not, maybe it's something that they feel like they're not enough and they need that confirmation. But that confirmation is an empty confirmation, because they have to continue to feed that need. And if they are on that cycle, there's it has to be something that they stop themselves, that they realize themselves, and they work on, what is it that I'm actually looking for? Because they have to hit bottom sometimes to realize, okay, I've been doing whatever it is, and I've been going through all these horrible relationships because I've been hooking up with the wrong people, based on the wrong criteria. And then once they get to that rock bottom, then there's a maturity level, and it doesn't mean you have to be older. You can hit that maturity level in your teens, in your 20s, in your 60s. You could go on for a long time without hitting that, or forever. But if you do hit that, then that's when you kind of do the self reckoning of, I just really want to be happy. Like, I'm going to do what it takes to be happy. And being happy isn't somebody else's responsibility, and it's not going to happen on its own. And I can't have somebody buy it for me or do it for me. I've got to, like, clean out the weeds. I've got to look at the weeds. How did they get there? What are they about? Why did I call those weeds in anyway? Why did I plant those seeds anyway? And what was I really trying to do? And that is the kind of work that, it's not hard. People think it's like, you don't have to toil at a therapist's office for years, which some people do and never get there. You just have to actually be honest with yourself. And so if you can do that, there's that level of trust built into the way that you interact with your partner from the get go. People, I think women need to know this a lot, because women are very self doubting and these days, but they need to know that when you come to a man in that place of authenticity, that is sexy. That certainty. I've always said, like, certainty is sexy, but certainty rooted in authenticity is even more sexy. So, all the things that we try to do to ourselves exterior wise, it is just like that layer of fertilizer and fake flowers. And if we can get to the real stuff, but then there's more than that. I think, okay, so we've talked about that inner stuff, but then there's the trust part of that that foundation that you build with that person, that is saying, I can count on you no matter what.
yeah,
And this is what I build in with my children. And so I have to tell you about this, because I think it will help you to realize the foundation that you can build with a person. So with my children, before they could speak, I wanted to give them the sense of safety. And when somebody feels safe with you, they can relax. And when they can relax, they can be themselves. So you, as the other partner, can lead this trust building by doing this. So if you start off with creating this feeling of, and it doesn't have to be unconditional love like you would think. At first, with a relationship, it's just doing what you say that you're going to do, being there,
yeah,
showing up. Even if you don't have the tools, even if you don't know what to do, you show up and you are there with your whole self. Like, I'm 100% behind you. I don't know where this is going. I don't know what you need, but I'm here for you. And if you do that consistently and show them that you do what you say that you're going to do and you follow through and you're there for them emotionally, physically, in any respects, and that they matter and that they matter deeply and that you will not hurt yourself for them, but you will give as much of yourself as you can while you still take care of yourself. And that's a really important part too, that they feel like you're whole, because the enmeshing codependent part is, I'm going to give you everything and I'm just going to fall to the ground for you and you can walk on me as a mat, and because I think that that's going to make you love me. That's where that whole codependent thing comes in, and that's not attractive. Nobody
It's not.
nobody
No.
wants that, you
Yeah.
know? So if both people come to it as showing up for each other, I'm here for you. I've got whatever resources I have, and let's do this together. And if they feel that support, and you always, that's what I did with my children. I always did what I said that I was going to do. And I'll just share a little patience stretching technique, because this has to do with trust too. So with children, it really irked me when they would be like at the grocery store. I was single at the time, and they're like, "Mom, mom, 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 mom," or whatever it is, or like crying on the floor. And I was like, I'm never gonna have kids like that. And actually, I don't. So this is what I did, and I'm sharing this with you because maybe some of you are parents or will be parents. I did this thing that I developed myself called patience stretching. I need to take a drink of water. Sorry. Okay. So I realized that children have a little tiny attention span at first. They're very inward. They think about what they're sensing and feeling, and then they'll look at you, and then they'll think about what they're sensing and feeling. So I thought, okay, well, for that moment when they want something, you can hold that moment for just a little while and then give them what they want. So I did it as far as like, if a child wanted something, maybe they were thirsty, I would say, "Oh, great. I'm acknowledging what you want. Oh, cool. Okay, yes, I see that you're saying you want your juice or your whatever it is. And just 1 second, I need to blah blah blah." And sometimes I would even not have to do the blah blah blah, but I would just have it like be one beat, 1,000. I'd go da 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 da. Okay, now I'm ready to get your juice. Here you go. And I stretched that to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. And I could have conversations on the street, which, Zelis, I can talk like forever, um, with other people. And my children would be patient, not pulling on my sleeve or not doing all these things. They would just be like, they would learn how to self entertain, because I had stretched their patience levels to a certain point where they got used to it. And I'm just looking at, oh, you're okay. It's just making sure your audio is still there. And so that that has to do with trust, in that if you say, okay, just 1 minute, I'm going to get that whatever it is that you want, then you always follow through. And when you always follow through and you do what you say that you're going to do, even if it's a punishment, even it's like, you know, well, when we go to the mall, you need to stay in your stroller, because then we can't ride the train unless you stay in your stroller all the way till up to the train, because there's going to be a lot of people. It's kind of like going to be a crazy scene. And so my son didn't stay in the stroller. And this is a real story. And he was all about trains. And this event had been coming for like weeks, and we talked about it every day. And he didn't stay in his stroller. So I literally picked him up in one arm and the stroller and had the other child on my back and walked out. He was shocked. This was the first time that I did the, I am following through fully on what I say in the negative way, because he needed
Yeah.
that defining moment to go, Mom is serious. And then he tried to fight me by getting in the car. I threw him in the car seat, did not strap his car seat buckle, and started driving. And he was freaking out. He's like, I'm not buckled, or something like that. He was 3 years old. And I didn't say a word. And not saying a word is better than saying anything. And once we got
Mhm.
home, there was a calming down. And then it was like, so here's the deal. I always talk to him like a real person. So here's the deal. This is what played out, you know? And he was like silent, taking it in. He never crossed me after that. He always took the information in, said, and I would go over it with him if he wanted, okay, mom, what we're going to do? Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and here's the rules, and this is the parameters. You can stretch in this way. You can once we're there, then you can run, you know, and if you give them the right boundaries, but that knowing of like, here is the deal. This is how we do this. And I'm serious, but we're going to have a lot of fun. We can do a lot of things within these rules. And in the same way, if you are really authentic with your partner, and I was with Aaron, I'm like, okay, I only have this much time to have children. This has to happen. This has to happen. But here's all these gray areas that we can build together. There's all these other areas. So let's talk about what your vision is so we can build this together, because I'm not the boss here. I don't want to be the boss here, but I must have these things to fit myself to be happy in a relationship. And
Mhm.
so the trust was built in the authenticity and with the showing up and doing what you say you're going to do. And, so that combination of support and showing up and being there and listening too, that I feel like with that, I have children that are so happy. They know they're taken care of. They trust me. They trust my husband. There's not a question. They're not worried um, really about anything. If they need something, they ask and we respond. And I'm not saying I'm like the perfect parent or this is the way for everyone, but I'm just saying that this is the trust building that I think is the foundation for every relationship. And you can start from there and then do your own thing. But if every parent and every relationship did this, we'd be starting off at a better place. So I'm sure you have some thoughts
I
here.
Yeah, no, I had to stand up and get something to write it down because I remember you sharing the story about patience building when we had our daughter, and I was like, oh my Lord, I need to write that down and implement that technique. And it's so true. I think that there's this real society has this flaw of like, having this Santa Claus story where it's like you're telling your kids about this mythical, person that brings presents and they don't exist. And then once your kid gets to be, whatever age, they realize like you were lying to me, like Santa isn't real and you were putting your name on the presents and stuff. And I think that's something that um, is just a really messed up lesson that people go through in our current society. And it's just what a way to like, build distrust,
Mm-hmm.
from so that's something I have been aware of for a long time. I'm like, I don't want to be Scrooge, but I also don't want to lie to my kid, so I just like let them kind of indulge a little bit of this fantasy, but I'm not going to be the one feeding it to them.
Yeah, just we didn't believe in lying either, and I think that was a problem in the school because we
Yeah.
didn't we weren't like from the get-go Santa's not real. No, we didn't say that, but it was more like, well, there's the magic of Christmas. There is a magic of a spirit that, and so you can couch it depending on their age in a certain way where there's truth in what you're saying. And I always told them a part of it that was true so that they could enjoy the magic to the certain point when once it got beyond the point where okay, what is the actual spirit, and it's like, well, it's this generosity that we all feel toward each other and that we want to keep alive in this ritual that we're doing. And once they can understand that, then they're mature enough to go, oh, so it's not really embodied in a person. No, it's embodied in this generous spirit that we have for each other. And that is the embodiment, like visual embodiment of Santa. So that's a symbol. And if you can understand at this certain age, there are symbols for things that we do. And so we have carried the symbol culturally. And so we do this as a culture, as a ritual. Um, but then there's people who like hang on to oh, it's the actual man. And I'm like, that's actually scary. I said, wouldn't that actually be scary if like a man came into our house and like opened the door or
Yeah.
went through the chimney? We don't have a chimney. So like went to the window or whatever. Like that's actually kind of scary. So it's really this good spirit of giving that we're doing here. And so then they got it. They're like, oh, okay. But then, when somebody did say at school, well, is Santa real? Then they're like, no, you know, but they're like, but there's
Yeah.
a spirit. But that wasn't, but then a parent got really upset and that became a thing. But, you know, you can't be perfect. You can't make everybody happy. But
Well,
being
just to,
truthful.
to throw us back on track though, it's such a reflection with, how in relationships, when you're not being honest and upfront in the beginning of it, then, 5 years down the road, you start to have these, hidden secrets, whether they were lies you told yourself or something that you were just trying to portray, that all comes to the surface. And then it will instill mistrust in your partner, in your relationship, and so it just kind of comes back to that, like how to build trust is like you got to be honest with yourself, and then you got to always be honest with your partner, and there's so many layers to that, like that honesty, where I feel like we want to tell little lies to protect our kids, we want to like do different things. You don't have to give the whole story, but you're going to try to like you're doing it in a good way, but you're still like sheltering them from the greater potential or whatever it is. And it's just a slippery slope. You start to justify your own little lies out of the intent being good, and then they accumulate, and then you have at some point when your partner finds out, oh, all these little things you were leaving out the details, the important parts of the story, or um, then it's like, well, what else are we missing, like
I think
there's
there's a
just that.
good way to do it that I do with my kids that I think I also did with my husband. And that was thinking of it. It's really how you approach it. Um, Instead of protecting with little lies so that you're trying to protect them being the gatekeeper. So think of if you think of yourself as the gatekeeper, then you will let certain amounts of information in that you think are helpful to them. And so you might keep something from them, but the motivation is not to protect them in that way that's like, oh, well, I have to like kind of deceive them because I don't want them to know about porn or whatever it is. Like I'm just thinking that's a like some parents are like, oh, that's the one like the worst thing, which I don't think is the worst thing. But um, so you're the gatekeeper, and you will allow them to understand something, certain things. So you'll allow the information to come in, and you'll say, well, this is something that some people enjoy. It's entertainment, like if you're gonna like let it in, but it's a super young child, and maybe somebody at somebody's house, which happened, like within our group of friends, somebody saw something, and so then how do you explain it? So you don't open the floodgates and like explain the whole thing and show them actual stuff. You determine how old they are and what they're ready for. And it's the same with relationships. It's like you don't want to tell everybody like every single thing of the depths of your soul. They're not ready for that. So you need to give them bits of information so that they can slowly digest and understand. You're not deceiving, but you're helping them to take in information to understand you. And if you're like say giving somebody instructions, you can't tell them the end of the instructions to get somewhere. You have to like lead them from the very beginning, turn right, turn left, you're going to see this. If you tell them this instruction of, okay, then when you're at the stop sign, then you're there. If you tell them that, it confuses them if you didn't go through the steps in the beginning. So you have to allow someone to understand you at a paced kind of rhythm of, what are we ready for? What are they ready for? What's going to help them to understand and to see where we can go together? Because if you give them too much of you, they don't feel like there's room for them, and then they need to have some input and building together. So when you have a relationship, I think the tendency is women feel like right now, I need to get what I want out of this relationship. And so I'm going to stake my claim. Here are the things that I need. I have my list. The list is a big thing for women. It actually is it's a real thing, and it's a big thing. And I have my list, and he's got these things, and I want so many. It has to require like this many things ticked off my list. Otherwise, but then when they start getting attractive, they're like, well, he has 5 things, so maybe I'll maybe I'll let go of those other 40. But it's letting, the rhythm is being honest, letting that person formulate with you, and the shared experience is also a trust building, like when you share, of building the vision. And that's what we did as a couple. We literally used to like drive around, sometimes just park in it like the longest parking lot, which is like nothing. It's kind of like weirdos there sometimes. And we would laugh at like seeing strange people. But then we would also talk about our visions. And it was so much fun, and I was honest. I'm like, well, this is how I see this. So how can, and what do you see in this? And so how can we do this in building this together? And we worked out so many things before even getting married. I mean, there were so many things that we talked about, like the teenager with the nipple rings and the whatever. Like, I don't know, most people don't go there right away. But, and I think that helped set the expectation too, because expectations are another thing with trust. It's like if you
Yeah.
set up somebody to deceive them because you want to get what you want, and then there's a certain expectation of like, well, I'm going to do this and get what I want. And then that person's like, well, I thought we were going to do this, but then I realized you're actually like going around me because you didn't want me to react or to do something. And that person that may be like walking on eggshells because they want to please the person actually, or they're trying to manipulate. Either way, it's the same feeling. They're like, wait a minute, something's happening and this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel authentic, and you lose trust. So I don't know. There's quite kind of a lot there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a real challenge for people in long-term relationships, is like once you've been deceived, how do you like rebuild that trust? Like I kind of feel like there's an element of like when you start off in a new relationship and you are, and you build that trust and you don't have any little affairs or cheating. Like I just feel like, cheating or affairs and then not telling the person until, weeks, years, months later, it can just do a real number on your relationship, whether you talk about it or not. And then once you do talk about it, like how do you like recover from that? You're always going to have that like issue you're going to have to be aware of. So it's really like best to not do those things. And then, right there on that same essence, when you do something to to be dishonest to your partner, then you start wondering if it's your partner being dishonest. It's like if you had this little love affair, whether it was, actually sexually intimate, or if it was just a long distance fantasy relationship or whatever it is, well, then you start to think, well, like, what are they doing? And I feel like you can really just undermine that foundation of trust so easily. It's like, you have to be really careful, and it's really a matter of staying in your integrity with yourself and then, within your relationship. Because for, I guess I'm really curious in your perspective, or even our audience out there, is like, can you rebuild that trust? It's like there's something about that purity trust that hasn't been tarnished, that is really like this gold standard for the quality of living. And um, once that's diminished, then are you ever going to get it back? Or like how, I think there's so many levels of trust, where it's like we put it all into this one umbrella. But you have the like monogamous intimacy trust, you have the you pay your bills on time trust, the you'll always be there when I need someone trust. And they just get scooped into all the same thing, because you can't really like reference, oh, I don't trust you intimately quite as much, but I do trust that you're going to pay your bills on time. And it's like the same thing with love. You don't talk about the levels and avenues of love. You just have to have this blanket statement. Otherwise there would be caution and concern if you love somebody just a little less in one area from one day to another, or a little more.
It all does get lumped into the same trust level, whether it's in a relationship. There's all these different areas, like you were saying, finances and showing up. But it feels like our last show, how does it make your partner feel? It makes them feel something. When there's instability in the finance area, when you don't show up, when you have passive aggressive actions, microaggressions, any of that, there's this eating away at the trust level. And there, and that, as you said, feeds the other person to have a reaction. And so that becomes the dance that you set the tone for. The setting the tone is a thing, but it has to be done consciously. And unconsciously, we tend to do things out of fear. It's like what is happening, that the person is destroying the trust, is because they're either a need is not being met, or they're fearful and they're being dishonest out of fear. And so if we look at those things can be repaired. It is much harder, as you said, when you have a clean slate and there's that automatic from the get go, we have a clean slate, we trust each other. Once you dig your hole, it is so hard to fill that back up. You're just way down there, and that person who's up here is like, I need you to prove to me that you're going to be at this level again, and you're going to have my back, and that is going to be solid. That's not just going to be like, I'll throw some pebbles in, and so it'll look like trust. That feeling of how you're making your partner feel has to be solid, and that takes a lot of work to get back there. But I do believe it's possible. The way to get back there has to be extremely authentic in taking responsibility for not just what you did, but the motivation behind what was going on with the whole scenario with both of you. Because there are certain needs that need to be met. And it's no one's fault, really. It's that we react out of this childlike state to get our needs met. So when someone goes off and has an affair, that person's the bad guy, whether it's a woman or a man. That's the bad guy. And something happened here. And that's not, let me just fix that. Okay. And that's not like, that's not what we want to focus on. We don't want to focus on that action and go, never do that again, because like a child, that action is not the thing that they were actually seeking. They were seeking something deeper. So we have to look at, what are we responsible for in this situation that could have made some ingredients in the stew. There's all these
Mm-hmm.
different ingredients that we add together in our relationship, and it causes a stew. We're together in it, and those things cause reactions. And if we don't take responsibility, then we're not actually getting to the real issue. But if we do, then once we look at those, then both parties can understand. And it's an understanding coming to like the basis of, oh, So that's what you were feeling. Oh, so that's what you were feeling. And there can be healing there. So there's a model, a social model that actually this this guy Kim John Payne has put out. It's for bullying, but it's really to heal. It's actually, it comes from an old tribal custom of healing communities, and it is where the parties that are involved in a situation, an unpleasant situation, come together, and then the tribe of elders are there to witness, and the entire community is there to witness, and they all watch as each person is allowed to hold that talking stick and just state their view, their Rashomon view. As we talked about last week, Rashomon is a movie where everybody has their own perception of what happened, and there's truth to them in that. So each person tells their truth, and there's a discovery. And I saw this happen in real life because a situation happened with my children where children got out of hand. Some people were hurt and crying. And I suggested that we hold this kind of session. And you could see with every child's story, parents and children were like, oh, so that's why you did that. Oh, so that's what you were thinking. So that's what it looked like to you. So that's why you reacted that way. So then that person did this because of that action. Oh, and that's why you did that? Oh, that wasn't out of aggression, or it wasn't out of hate, or it wasn't out of discrimination. Oh, so if we can have that kind of bottom level understanding where we were at and being honest, then there's a
Mm-hmm.
discovery of, okay, you're not really trying to hurt me. You're not really
Mm-hmm.
carrying in all that old baggage. It actually is a need. So let's look at those needs. Where can I help with those needs in a real way? Not a band-aid, but there's something like integral, or it's their own need that that person can't do anything for. It's an old need. It's a personal
Mm-hmm.
need. So that's where we can actually start from rebuilding. And then there's the showing up consistently, building that trust and doing what you say you're going to do, and making sure that that is exactly supportive for that person, what they
Mm-hmm.
need and want from that deep need. So that's the way to do it, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's a real element there that I see how you can build trust with your partner even through mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all exposed to different kinds of opportunities, whether it's, getting solicited on Instagram from, guys that want to be your sugar daddy, to, the girl in the office that's, flirting with you and letting you know she likes you. And so you never know, like, how many different things your partner is going to be subjected to, these opportunities. And sometimes it's not that your partner was like looking for something else. Sometimes opportunities just happen and they didn't have the self-control in that moment to make the right choice. And so I think that, we have to recognize that we're all going to make mistakes. That's part of being human, and your partner's going to make mistakes. And you have to accept that, and to really recognize that how you handle those mistakes is going to really show whether or not you're going to build trust or whether or not you're going to lose it. Because if you can kind of say, hey, I made this mistake, I've been carrying on with this person on, an online forum, and, I've realized I'm being out of integrity with you, my partner. So, this is what happened, and explain it. It's like that'll actually kind of make you in a space of being like, okay, I didn't know that was happening. And it's a little frustrating, but yet my partner was able to come forward and tell me. So now I have more trust with them, even though they were entertaining this thing. It's like that's how you can you build trust through these situations that you're inevitably going to be exposed to in relationships. We have so many different avenues. It's like, well, why haven't you been paying the mortgage, honey? And it's just like, well, I borrowed money and then I owed this it's like, if somebody can try to be forthcoming and say, look, I made a mistake, and explain, even though it was wrong, this is what I was going through that led me to this situation, then, then your partner will know, okay, now I know, don't let him hang out with Barney Rubble, because Barney Rubble's got this gambling ring going on, or whatever the deal is. You can build trust within that relationship through mistakes. And I think that that's ultimately what you got to like really look at. One side of me wants to be like, really, if you come in with full honesty, and then you're going to build the best foundation, and you're going to have the most trust in your relationship. And then from there on, things are going to erode it, and you have to, just don't fuck up your relationships. Well, that's one way to do it in a perfect world.
It's
It's
gonna
not like that.
happen.
It's going to happen. So
There's gonna be
really what you've got
triggers.
to do is recognize how to like turn unfortunate situations into trust building opportunities.
Well, there has to
And
be like one step further. Can I?
please.
So in the real world, I'm just like imagining people going to their partner and going, "Hey, I'm gonna be super honest." Maybe not smiling. Hey, I'm gonna be super honest. I don't know why I'm smiling. I just had this affair, or I thought about having an affair. Like the red flags, the triggers, it becomes so heated that the person can't even hear. So there needs to be a level of communication established before that conversation that both people empathize with where each other is at. So, in a situation now with me where, say, just say that happened with my husband, which it hasn't, but if it did, I would think, okay, so I have a responsibility here to find out what he's not getting from me. He needs these three things. He needs the queen who has his back. He needs who runs everything. He needs the mother who's nurturing. And he needs the enchantress who is the fun person, the flirty person, the one who like does the, I don't know, crazy, unpredictable, not unpredictable, but fun things. And and this I have to say is a form of what comes from this Understanding Men program Alison Armstrong created. It's a form of that. So if you look at those things and you think, am I giving him those things? Or a man saying, am I giving her the things that she needs, like the essentials? And if you are honest, then you can say, well, maybe I wasn't being so nurturing. Maybe I was being kind of cold. Like, yeah, I was running our business and I had all that handled. And maybe I kind of had the flirty thing going on, but I wasn't really nurturing him. And so this other woman came along who, was like just very nurturing, listening to him. He was hurt, and she would spend time listening to his woes. And maybe I wasn't there for him because I was so busy running the business. And then I'm like, oh, let's just go out and have a good time. Let's go get drunk. Let's go do fun stuff. But the safety of all three, the nurturing part is part of the safety. And the queen is the safety too, but you have to feel safe. So he didn't feel safe. So that's my doing, that I wasn't there for him. And that's not an excuse, but it's seeing why. And we have to understand that foundational piece so that we can come in and go, I get why you were attracted to her. I wasn't there for you in that way. So now, listen, I understand you need that, but this is what I can do now. Is this going to be enough? Does this feel good to you? Do you feel like if I have the time to really listen to your woes, can you maybe forego that feeling you have for her? Maybe that will just go away. Maybe your friendship with her will become more friendship level because you're getting that from me. Maybe he didn't step out and go do it the deed yet. So there's still the possibility that I can switch this around. And that takes an empathetic space and not reacting like you're going out on me, like you're turning your back on me, or you're what is the word, betraying me. It's not about me. And if we can not make it about ourselves, where it's like, no, there's a need here, There's a child in each of us. So, what is the child? What is the person not feeling safe about? What are they not getting? And when we look at that, we can keep a monogamous relationship alive and well. I mean, there's nothing that a man or a woman would do for something else to risk if they have all that they're getting. They'll be like, there's no way I'm ruining this for just that little beautiful, sexy lady there. I can look at her, that's fine, but I've got everything I need at home. No, I'm not going to ruin this. You know, and there's no pull to that. It just goes away. It's like it doesn't even exist if I have everything here and I'm satisfied. So yeah, I can look at a pretty girl, that's fine. I can flirt with her maybe talking wise, but your emotional bonding with her doesn't happen. That need doesn't pull on you. And so the same for women, that need doesn't pull for her to find that man because she's got her sexy hero that does all those things that she feels like I'm being listened to, I'm being supported, and I still have this really like rock solid man who takes care of things and protects me and does all the things that I feel like I need in my relationship with a man. And there would be no issues if that happened. So that is the trust, but we have to have those things to feel safe. And so safety and trust really go hand in hand. As you heard with my children's, how I did that with my children. It's like they have
Mm-hmm.
to feel safe. They have to feel held. They have to know that you have their best interest at heart, even if you scoop them up out of the mall to get away from that beautiful train experience. That's like you have their
Oh.
best interest at heart. And I think that's where we feel held and safe as the childlike person inside, you know.
Yeah, I want to say that, sometimes outside forces, I don't necessarily think it is always about your partner being everything for you, but maybe it is. So I'm I wrestle with that being 100% true and whether or not sometimes outside forces just happen. And it might not be anything that your partner was neglecting, but the
Oh, that's
deeper you look
interesting.
into that, you're like, you really, you can't take your partner's, you can't own your partner's desires if
No.
they have something else happen. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily all on you, but you certainly need to go and give it a look. And I think something that it's just like, if you catch your partner, find out your partner is having an affair, what you're basically saying is, well, like, oh, well, then maybe you weren't fulfilling that side of them. So you weren't fulfilling this like sexual, playful side, you know? And so now you have to take this situation on where you're angry that your partner was having an affair, but now you have to embody this like sexual, playful stuff. And it's like such the last thing that you want to do, but yet it kind of might just be the way that you make it work, and just to recognize, sorry, I wasn't doing that. And here's why. And I think, for me, or my take on it is, when these things happen, don't necessarily take it on as your own responsibility for their mistrust, but to go and say, like, it's an opportunity to build trust, because you have to talk about, like, well, what happened, and people have to be willing to listen. I think that it's so much in relationships, people don't want to listen to their partner's feelings because they feel differently. It's like, well, screw your feelings. You were just feeling like horny, you fuck. But then, there's actually more going on there, and people don't want to take on their shortcomings. They don't want to go, well, you know, and you have to take on those, like, what are your shortcomings? What can you do to create fulfillment and to work around those? And it's so tricky with communication because there's just resentment and anger, and you don't want to communicate about these hard things. That's such, I think, one of the biggest challenges of trust building and relationships in general, is that people don't want to talk about the difficult things. It's like the really hard shit is like, I don't want to go there because it might be
It
bad,
might
and
break.
yeah, but
Usually
it's
that's
like, you know
the
what, if you don't test the strength of your relationship, then that's how, is that it? Is that just another way you can test the strength of your relationship to build trust? Is that a way to build trust, is testing the strengths? by being honest.
The, um, I'm trying to think of what I was just saying. There are a couple things there. Um, okay, now I just totally lost my train of thought because there's two different things that I think were really really big that you were talking about. And um, tell me what you're saying again, just so that I can
Not
remember.
not owning your partner's like desires, like if your partner has an affair, or you don't have to go and say, what was I doing to trigger that? That was something I feel like you would want to react to. And then just the other one of like people not wanting to talk about the difficult things in relationships. It's like we want
Mm,
to avoid these real hot button topics. But I think that it's an interesting theory that I would love to explore more of, talking about these difficult hot button topics that you want to avoid is actually how you're going to build trust. Because if you talk
okay.
about the shit you don't want to talk about, then that you're having some honesty. You're building that trust, because
Hmm.
it's real easy to just be like, let's not talk about the shit that bothers my partner, and
Hmm.
I feel like that's where this divide happens. Let's not talk about the conflict items, and you grow further and further apart,
Hmm. Those are
and
the
and
little
that's
elephant.
ultimately that opportunity to like build the trust, and it's like, oh yeah, honey, check this out. Look at this guy. Look at this message that he sent me. Like it's kind of crazy that I get solicited for this show all the time. It's like you don't want to talk about that because you don't want your partner to be like, what are you doing? Like, like change your profile picture, make yourself private, do something different, But it's like, but that's how you actually build the trust, is knowing, oh yeah, we all have people flirt with us on the regular if you're a healthy human, and maybe even if you're not, but it's how you react to it, and whether or not you're going to deceive and be like, oh, I'm going to just see if this guy really is going to send me money or what the deal is.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
that's how
that
you're going to
so
build more trust, is by sharing with your partner these things you don't want to talk about. It's like, if you
yeah,
say, honey, like I don't know if I have enough money for the bills this month, it's like, well, what happened? Like we got to talk about this, but instead it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to borrow from the shark down the street so I can cover my debt from this. And then you have all this deception, and that just makes a gigantic wash on your foundation of trust. But if you can
yeah.
just be honest, then
There's a
you can
fear
work through it.
involved. And I kind of like to look at what's the behavior behind that. And there's a fear involved of kind of a childlike fear of like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble, so I'm going to try to like do my own little sneaky things to like make it all work, especially like say like finances, or like, how I can make it work for me and he doesn't have to know, or something like that. Um, but I don't know why I'm like having these brain things right now. um, the there's like something really foundational about oh yeah, the mini conversations. So a lot of times people think about these big heavy conversations, and yeah, those do have to happen sometimes, and we all hate them. Like in the last show, I was like, they're so unsexy, and I don't want to have those conversations all the time. That we all dread them, but you don't have to have those conversations all the time if you address things and set a tone from the very beginning. So I think setting the tone is super crucial of this authenticity. And when a red flag comes up for me, I'm going to say it. And it's a lot of times really small things that we can address in a minute. It's like, okay, notice this was going on over here. What is this about? Do you have uh, a motivation for this, or is there a reason, or because I guess it's bothering me because I don't understand it, or there's a different way that I normally do that. So, but I'll go along with it if I get it. So, whenever there's a red flag that comes up for me, I have to just like talk about it. And I don't have to do it in a confrontational way. It can be just like, "Oh, what's going on over there?" Oh, okay, I get it now. And when you do that repeatedly, you set a tone for honesty. And you set this
Hmm.
tone that is okay to question your partner because it's not a fight. It's like just an understanding. And then that person knows that you're coming from a place of trying to get it, trying to empathize, trying to see where they're coming from. So when you get into the bigger stuff, it's easier to get into that space of, oh, what are you trying to get from that? Because it's really hard if you don't do that at all. If you're just like, and
Hmm.
only do that in the big conversations, it's you're not practiced. We have to practice at everything we get good at. So if you're constantly trying to empathize and understand, then that person knows that you give them the benefit of the doubt almost all the time,
Yeah.
unless something just like is so deeply rooted in you personally, maybe from old stuff, that you react. And then you've got to check yourself and go, why am I reacting so harshly? Why am I so bothered? So it's really a lot of it's like self-talk, analyzing, thinking before you say, and empathizing. I mean, empathy is, maybe people don't know what the word is, but it's to put yourself in the other person's shoes and look out from their eyes. Like, look out from their eyes and go, how am I feeling right now? Why am I doing this? What's my motivation? And if you can do that, then you can help that person and you don't take it personally. So I know that almost everything anybody does that has to do with me has nothing to do with me personally. They're just interacting. And if it bothers me, then there's a reason that it's either my stuff or else I need to help them to communicate that better or understand them better. And when you do that, you don't have to have things don't come to a head so much. They just don't, because you've taken care of all the little irky things that you're like, oh, I just got irked. And if you let that irk build up to like the many things, even if they have to do with all these different areas of our life, then suddenly there's this big thing. It's like, well, you always and you never, and it
Hmm.
really is just all those little irks that you didn't take care of. So it's a life is a lot about maintenance, I think.
Yeah. It
That's
it
not
brings me
sexy,
back
but
to I did this little mini class on neurolinguistics. And
mm-hmm.
one of the things they talked about was how much of what we convey is conveyed through tone and body language. And it was something like crazy, like 50% of what we communicate comes from body language, and 37% was through tone. And it was like a whopping like 14% was coming from what we actually say. And it's
Exactly.
just so valid in both interaction and communicating with kids, and sales, and then most importantly your relationship. And it's like the thing that got me thinking about this was when you said, when you approach these big hot topics and have these like big talks that need to happen, it's like nothing more challenging than that setup of we need to have a talk. It's like that's gonna just set everything up for like,
You're like,
oh shit,
oh no, yeah, I'm in trouble.
what did we do now? Yeah. And so much of it is like, oh, I noticed this, and just kind of coming across in a non-confrontational way of like, oh honey, I noticed, the mortgage hasn't been paid. Is there a reason? Is there something? um, is there a reason why?
Mm-hmm.
Asking that question, not being like, you didn't pay the mortgage, what's going on? It's like, oh, I noticed this, is there a reason why? That's going to create a space where somebody can be like, okay, I got to let or I noticed that the password on your phone was changed. Is there a reason why? That is there something going on there? Or,
Mm-hmm.
just having that like tone and that energy is going to make somebody, you want to make it easy for your partner to be honest and to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, to
Good
build
point.
that trust. And so like when you're mistrusting them, you have to recognize like, oh, you can feed into that as well, and that like, I'm going to set a little trap and I'm going to catch you. And, you know, and then it's like, and a lot of it can really even be like that thoughts becomes things, it's like, well, I think they're having, an affair. And I don't know if it's just somebody that's, you know, if they're just messaging with somebody, if they're meeting with somebody, or what the deal is. But the more you think about it and the more you let it fester, the more likely it probably is to happen. It's like we do create those things, whether you really want to subscribe to that belief or not is up to you. But I've seen it happen so many times. It's definitely a reality that I don't doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, there are
I
two
think
really
that
good Oh, go ahead.
just the importance of how you communicate in body language and in tone, and just creating a safe environment for your partner to be vulnerable about those hard things, about those mistakes, and about those challenges that we face in life is going to make you have a better relationship, because you know that, like, oh, whether it's something big or small, my partner is going to accept me, you know. It's a mutual thing of trust. Even if you make a mistake, you have to trust that your partner is going to be willing to forgive you, you know. And that is another way that you're going to build that trust, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much
Mm-hmm.
with trust. It's got to be like the biggest, you know, the pole on the umbrella of a relationship, you know. It's everything kind of grows from there. And um, I think it's
Yeah.
so important that you're honest, you know. It's like, it kind of brings it back to me, to your story about putting yourself out there on match.com, of like what you want, and all these people were really attracted to that. It's like, because you know what, like, we want somebody who's going to be honest. We want that no bullshit. Don't try to make yourself out to be one person and then be something else. It's like, that's the way you're going to get into a good relationship, and that's what people want, you know. It's like, ultimately, if you trust yourself and you've done that work on yourself, that's what you want, is somebody who's also done that work, so that you can get off on a really good foundation, and build from a stable foundation.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, to keep the relationship ongoing and lasting, there were two things that you said that were brilliant, which is allowing the space for that person to be heard, so that it's like, if you have this person who's not going to hear you, then that relationship is not, you're not communicating at all, and it sets the tone. So when a person, I can just see this visual of when a person allows that space, they're being generous to get into the empathetic space of, I want to hear you. That's what they're saying. When their body language is like, I want to discover what it is that you're feeling and thinking, even though it looks scary or horrific, like the mortgage isn't paid. But I want to hear you. I want to know what's going on with you. I care about why this happened. I care about what's going on that caused this to happen, that maybe you're in pain or maybe you're scared. And I'm open to discovering what it is with you. I'm willing to walk through it with you to figure out what it is that you need emotionally, physically, financially, how we can do this together to heal whatever it is that is the root cause of this happening. It could be an emotional thing. Maybe it's not all about the money. So it could be something else. I'm willing to walk this walk with you, go through the journey of understanding, and then supporting, assisting, walking side by side with you through it. And that is a whole different way than, well, what happened? Why did you pay the mortgage? And it's your fault. And, it's like, so setting that tone, it takes being in that empathetic space to do that. And then in addition to that, you said something about your partner acting out in a way that you expect. And it comes back to something that I do with my children. It's like, we label ourselves. We all do. We fit ourselves into certain boxes. And if we can label ourselves before other people label us, like I said before, we have the advantage of making it the best it can be. And so sometimes people need help in labeling themselves, like children. And if you can see their best self, even if they're acting out, even if they're doing a behavior that is not socially okay, and then you can bring it forward to say, well, what are the strengths in that behavior that I can take, say it's aggressiveness, and bring it into a heroic place, or where it's admired. And so with my child, it was this aggressiveness that somebody saw in him, and I'm like, that's actually what knights in shining armor, that's what knights do. They have this honor and they have this strength. And so I see you as this. And so with an adult, you don't have to actually say, like, I see you as the knight in shining, but you could say, Interesting. Well, that behavior of you being able to woo somebody or whatever, or working out, and then you found it's like, oh, well, maybe we can work out together, or I'm interested in working out. I'm wondering if you can teach me. And suddenly your interest in the workout and interest in them and what they're interested in, and that you're seeing them as the one who is looked at and admired, could switch things around. So it's it's like putting a positive label on them and their identity, where they may actually see themselves as not so great. Like they're like, I'm feeling like I'm about to have an affair. I must be a bad person, or whatever it is. Or I'm being super secretive because I need to change the password because I'm feeling like um, I need to hide this from my partner because I feel like maybe I'm having an affair. But maybe that's like finding the things in that and going, wow, you're so resourceful, and to be able to do this, and what is underneath that I can get behind, and also come into that space of what you're needing and support you in that. Not that I want you to have an affair or be secretive, so let's look at that, and let's say, like, where are you going with that, so I can walk there with you. And if the person doesn't want to walk with you, you can't walk with them. They have
Yeah.
to be willing. So you have to have a
Hmm.
partner who's willing. But in committed relationships, that's what you agree upon. And that's the thing with marriages these days. I believe that people have to, if they're going to make it work, then fully commit. Because if you fully commit, there is a way, unless you're a crazy
Hmm.
person, or if your partner's a crazy person or something like that. But if you're basically sane, normal people, you can support each other in this way. But it takes this changing the dynamic of being in this empathetic space and discovering with each other what's going on here and understanding. And what we're doing right now, most couples are not doing that. They think it takes too much time. It actually doesn't. With a practice like that, even at school with school children, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. That's why a lot of parents don't do it. They're like, no, I see you with the arrow. That means you're the one who's at fault. I'm going to take that from you, and the behavior is going to stop. It's like, well, but they didn't take the time to say, hey, what's going on here? Oh,
Hmm.
so you took that arrow from the other person who was trying to stab you. Oh, okay. Well, why are you trying to stab him? Oh, because, and it's a long story of a lot of things that happened prior to that we didn't see. That's the
Hmm.
Rashomon. It's like, oh, we didn't know that. Oh, we didn't know that. Oh, discovering somebody else's viewpoint. And so if we just take even 5 minutes sometimes, or less with children, oh, okay, I get it. Well, here's what we're going to do. It's all about fairness then. So we're going to set some rules. It wasn't about the arrow. It was about creating a fairness, like some rules here, and then everybody gets it. So that's what we need to do in our relationships, is really understanding and taking 5 minutes, 2 minutes in these micro conversations, of red flags. Oh, let me understand what's going on here, and we can
Yeah. And
what dissolve a lot.
yeah, you have to have an open mind. I am kind of just trying to jot down some ideas about how do you build this solid foundation of trust. And I think that one of the real pillars of it has got to be like being open-minded. You have to be like willing to not be rigid in your perspective and try to see, where your partner, where your child is coming from, and not just go, I told you you can't play with arrows anymore. It's like you have to have an open mind to try to figure out what else was going on, and to not be set on like an outcome or a root cause. I think that if you want to really have trust in your relationship, you got to be open to see the other perspectives and the other sides of the story, because there's just so many facets to every interaction you have in life. Um, and that's really your takeaway is like to see things from every side. Like it's not a two-dimensional world we live in. And um,
I see it
yeah.
as a discovery. Like, when we're in a relationship, I think people really set definitions of relationships that are too static. And it's like, we're married, we're doing this, da da da, or we're dating and we're doing this. But in every facet of a relationship, there's a discovery because we are ever changing beings. The world is ever changing. We take in information from where we are now. Now we're in this pandemic. So now the world's different. So now we operate differently. So that means we as individuals and as couples and as parents and friends operate differently. So if we, non pandemic times, are in this knowing that things are ever changing moment by moment, and not to be afraid of it, not to be like, whoa, that's too crazy, but like, this is a given in life. Nothing stays the same. We are ever changing, ever growing. So if we accept that as a given and like just go with it and say, we are in discovery constantly. And so my discovery of you as a person and my discovery of me continues to morph as we walk, as we go. And so we're not trying to like make it perfect, have the balance, do the thing that therapists or whomever says we're supposed to do. It's like, no, we're not gonna do, we might do that thing and go, yeah, we won, but there's gonna be more because we're gonna change. So if we are knowing this is a constant reworking, and if we communicate, oh, this is feeling weird now, okay, I'll take care of that. Okay, this is feeling, okay, what's your take on this? And understanding, communicating, understanding, readjusting, that's the dance that we are constantly doing with everybody. And then and it's not, I guess it's not defined. That's why it's hard for people. And it's not like, here's a set of rules, if you do this then you're safe. It's like, no, that's not.
You become, you hit that plateau and it's boring, you know. And I think that's where you see these couples that stick together until their kids graduate high school, and as soon as the kids are out there, they separate, you know. And it's like, because you weren't really being open-minded and checking in with your partner and growing and morphing. And you know, like, you have to go and look at the changes of the life as like the opportunity to really enrich your relationship. And you know, it becomes, for a lot of people, it can be the real joy. You know, I think that's really where the joy is. And for other people, if they want to be real rigid in their mind and their relationship, then it becomes the challenge. So
There's two things I'm seeing here. It's like the person who thinks, okay, I need this great relationship, I want to win, like I want to be a winner. And then there's the person who is having the fun adventure. Like it's a constant adventure. There's no set goal like this person. Like, I want to have the perfect marriage. Done. Versus, we're just going to keep going and we're going to discover, have fun, keep going. Let's see where this goes. You know, and to me, that's where the joy is. Yeah, there's the romantic stuff that maybe is in the beginning and then the comfort. But when you're in that constant discovery of each other, it's automatically fun because I'm learning things all the time that I didn't know about Aaron. I'm like, and
uh-huh.
there's more. Like, I always think he's a great man. This is amazing. I'm like, and there's more, and there's more to him, and there's
Yeah.
more to him. This is crazy. I didn't know, you know, but that's him discovering himself too. So like, and he discovers more of me, and we're just as we go, and that's fun. That is
Yeah.
new. It's fresh, and so you don't have to create fake freshness. Like, we're changing, and it's cool to discover how you interact now, how you're doing this, or you know. So I think we're not utilizing what's actually there naturally. You know, in our minds, we're like, we need to work on our marriage. We have this certain thing goal.
Well,
Just
let's go and look at this one too. It's like, how much do people, we have this storyline of, you know, you have this adventure in life, you fall in love, and then you get married. End of like story. You know, like how many Disney stories end at the wedding, you know? And it's
right.
like everybody's dancing into the sunset. You're like, no, that's actually the beginning of the story, you
Yeah.
know? And that's where you need to like everything after that. And I feel that's where so many relationships, it's like, you know, you have that thing, you meet somebody, you feel like I could have kids with this person, you know, this could be the person to spend the rest of my life with. And then you get married, and then you have kids, or maybe you didn't get married and you had kids, whatever the scenario is. It's like you set this goal, and then you're not working on these longer distance, you're not making it playful and building off of it. So it's like, you just make it to that goal line, and then you're like, oh, now what? Do we want to buy a house? What do you want to do?
Well, it's
And you got to
the
really be.
expectations are too static. You know, if you have a certain vision and it's static and the world changes or the person changes or whatever, it's hanging on. People like to hang on to things a lot because they think that's a way of being safe, you know, and it reminds me of this analogy that maybe I've told you about of skiing. Did I tell you about that analogy of skiing, how it relates to life? So I have this story about when I was trying to learn to ski. I was a really terrible skier, and I took a lesson. And the guy was like, okay, drop your poles. We're going to go on the bunny slopes. And I want you to just lean in down the hill, face down the hill, lean in. And then as you shift your weight from one way to the other, you're going to turn. So we did this. It took me from blue to green to black diamond in one day. And what I realized is that when you lean back, you don't have friction on the front of your skis. So you're squirrely. And how that relates to life is when you lean back, you're in your head, you're thinking, you're scared. But if you actually trust life, then you literally can free fall by leaning in to what is in the present right now. And when you're in the present, you can react moment to moment in that present moment by shifting. But if you're trying to control by leaning back and like planning and like squirrel, then you're squirrely and you're not actually in the moment to receive all the information that's there. There's an element of trust. There's an element of facing down the hill and trusting that life is going to land you in a certain place. Maybe it's not pretty, but you'll be there and you'll go, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I just fell. Okay, you know, but if you lean in, you'll see that you have much more control in life, that you have so much more presentness that you can make those quick decisions rather than if you're really afraid and trying to control. So in that space of relationships, that discovery, it's leaning into your relationship to discover what is next and not trying to make it good. Like everybody's trying to make their relationship good. You know, like let's work on this.
Let's choke the life out of it. Oh,
Yeah, rather than like,
yeah.
I'm going to free fall down here and see where we go and have fun with it, discover each other, go in the moment. You know, that's what Aaron and I did. We're like, where are we now? Oh, I don't know. Okay, let's check it. Oh, cool. Let's do this now. Let's do that now. And you have to have an amount of faith in yourself and each other that you can handle whatever comes your way, whether it's positive or
Mm-hmm.
negative. And we've had some negatives that people would be like devastated by, but we are like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? Let's just go from here. And we're happy.
Yeah.
So,
There's something you got to just trust the unknown. It's kind of the way that we got into this conversation and podcasts in general. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to trust. And it's like so much information has come forward, and I wish I knew as much now a couple of years ago, because it's just been so beneficial to me. So thank you for all of our watchers and viewers, and for just trusting us on this journey, because we're just making it up as we go. And it's like we got some understanding here, but through that, like, trusting, that's where we're really starting to like learn, and sharing our stories and getting bits of knowledge is what how we're going to grow. So
exactly. Well, that's a great way to end it. We are in discovery of everything with you, along with you. So if you got anything valuable out of this, share this with anyone you know who might find it valuable. We'd love to just have discussions, you know, let us know what you're thinking. If there's anything that you're wondering about, give us a comment. We'll think about that and we'll share what we think. You know, we'll get a
I
discussion
think
going.
I think there's a lot more about trust that we should research and look into, because I'm sure people have done a lot of research on this one, and it's such a fascinating topic that I think that we should do a little research on our own and kind of revisit some more of this here, because I think
Sure.
it's an important thing for us to be talking about in relationships.
I think so too. This was great, and there's more. All
Yeah,
right.
lots.
All right. Well, I know you got to go. So we'll see everyone next week. This is Conversations with Men that women need to hear, and we'll see you next Thursday. Take care.
Bye-bye.